It's said that once you've been to Africa, the continent is locked in your heart forever. The deep cultural heritage is unmistakable and unchanging. The same can be said for the Middle East, where the people of Israel have passed down their traditions for centuries. But the Lemba are something completely different. This tribe, who live in Zimbabwe and South Africa, claim they are direct descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. Is it possible they are who they say they are? Astonishingly, the facts support their miraculous oral tradition. When the nation of Israel was formally reestablished in 1948, there was the hope by some that Jews everywhere would become unified once again. After all, God is faithful to his promises to the people of Israel, specifically. I will watch over and care for Israel, and I will bring them back here again. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not uproot them. Inspired by this prophetic promise of God, a great pilgrimage began, a journey made by Jews across the globe to mend a fracturing of people that occurred centuries ago. In the 8th century BC, as noted by historians and the Bible in 1 Kings, the Assyrian Empire conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, captured its people, and dispersed them over Assyrian territory. Historians say some were killed, many were blended into other cultures, and others fled. Thus began the tradition of the lost tribes of Israel. Lemba oral tradition, passed on through generations, says they came from the rabbinical tribe, the Levites. The Lemba say they fled their original home and traveled to Senna in modern-day Yemen, where they became traders and craftsmen until they were forced to escape war or natural disaster. This drove the Lemba across the Red Sea to Africa. During their journey down the African continent, tradition says the Lemba built great cities of stone. This is where science comes in. Archaeologists have verified the existence of these cities. In addition, at these stone city sites, many artifacts have been discovered. These facts are a direct tie to the oral tradition handed down by generations of Lemba. Tribes all over Africa have kept their traditions and customs, but the Lemba are like no other tribe. Strict adherence to Jewish customs have been watched over by Lemba rabbis. Despite losing their original Torah on the journey from Israel to Zimbabwe, all oral teachings and traditions have been maintained. The same kind of oral teaching described in the Old Testament. Dietary laws, including kosher standards and restrictions on meat, are obeyed. Circumcision. Intermarriage has been strictly forbidden to preserve the culture and bloodline. Traditional rabbinical clothing is worn. In a place thousands of miles away from Israel, detached from all Jewish culture, these African Jews who call themselves original Hebrews are committed to their way of life that has been passed down generation to generation. Eventually, DNA testing advanced to the point where the Lemba's claims could be put to the scientific test. University of London scholar Dr. Tudor Parfit swabbed a cross-section of Lemba tribe members, and the results were astounding. The Y chromosome, passed on by many males in the population, proved to contain the Cohen modal haplotype. Among Jews, the CMH marker is most prevalent among Kohanim, or hereditary priests. In addition, this marker is one that only emanates from the Middle East. It is not found in any identifiable African roots. Even more astounding are the following stats. The CMH marker shows up in 50% of the Lemba tested. The same marker shows up only 3 to 5% of the time in the general Jewish population. What could be tradition lost in generations of translation has proven to be quite the opposite. Stories passed on generation after generation, backed up by scientific proof. The Lemba are indeed astonishing. Some claim they are one of the lost tribes of the original Israel. Others say they are another piece needed to assemble the puzzle of Jews scattered all over the world until Israel became a nation again. MJBI learned of the Lemba and has been involved on the ground with them since 2012. At that time, there were no Messianic congregations in amongst the Lemba. Today, just 5 years later, there are now 72 congregations of people meeting on the Sabbath to worship Yeshua, the Messiah, each of them led by some of the 140 MJBI Lemba graduates.
Let me please introduce our distinguished speaker for.
So, we are able to welcome our guest here today because of our friends at the University of Utah. The Ancient Near Eastern Studies program works together with the Department of Religious Studies and some others at the University of Utah who are interested in Jewish and related studies. And so my friend and colleague Natan Devere told me about Tudor's visit to Utah. He will be giving his main lecture actually tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at the University of Utah on the Lemba people, who are a people in the south of Africa who have a tradition connected with the Ark of the Covenant. So that may catch some of your interest. So if you're able to get up there tomorrow evening, that will be an interesting lecture. I asked Natan if it would be possible for us to bring Tudor down to our campus, and because of Latter-day Saints' interest in Israelite bloodlines, I asked Dr. Parfit if there would be a way he could give a more general lecture about groups of people who claim kinship with the house of Israel. Let me just introduce our guest a bit more, and you'll understand why he is an expert who's able to speak to this issue. Tudor Parfit is Distinguished Professor in the Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs at Florida International University, where he is also the Navon Professor of Sephardi Mitzri Jewish Studies and the Director of the Global Jewish Studies Program. Now, if you will Google him online, you will see that he actually does quite a lot. You'll check his accent in a moment, but he's a British historian, broadcaster, and writer. And so he has traveled widely. In fact, I think one of his bios actually describes him as an adventurer. And he travels widely and speaks widely on some of these issues. And he's had a number of publications as well as the documentaries I've alluded to, just to name a few. In the Shadow of Moses, New Jewish Movements in Africa and the Diaspora, which came out this year, Becoming Jewish, New Jews and Emerging Jewish Communities in a Globalized World, also this year, and Black Zion in 2012. One of the things that may also catch the interest of a Latter-day Saint audience is, he may allude to this in today's presentation, is the use of genetics in either proving or disproving connections with the House of Israel, which of course affects our community in many ways. So without any further ado, I would like us to give a warm welcome to Dr. Tudor Parfit.